Welcome to this explainer. We're going on a bit of a cognitive rescue mission today. We're literally trying to escape the age of triviality. But right off the bat, I want to ask you a question that might honestly just reframe how you look at the entire world right now. If you think back to the great dystopian novels of the past, which terrifying reality do you think we're actually living in today? Like, are we being oppressed by fear, or are we secretly being destroyed by our own entertainment? Okay, so let's unpack this by looking at two of the most famous literary visions of the future. On one side, you've got George Orwell's 1984, written in 1949. Orwell envisioned this completely tyrannical state. He was terrified that they'd ban books, hide the truth, and just hold our culture captive through sheer oppression. But then there's Aldous Huxley's Brave New World from 1932. His fear was completely different, and honestly, it's kind of a lot more chilling. Huxley didn't think books would be banned. He was terrified that there would just be no reason to ban them, because literally no one would want to read at all. Orwell thought our culture would be held captive, but Huxley, he feared it would just become incredibly trivial. And looking around at the world today, I think it's pretty safe to say we're living right in the middle of Huxley's absolute nightmare.
Which brings us to Section 1, amusing ourselves to death, and the profound atrophy of our attention.
So back in 1982, this author, Neil Postman, basically sounded the alarm. He warned that we were amusing ourselves straight into cognitive decline. And history paints a really stark picture here. Think back to 1858. The Lincoln-Douglas debates were tackling incredibly heavy, complex topics like the abolition of slavery. The introduction alone for these things was an hour long. The whole event could go on for 3 hours. And the crazy part? The audience actually sat there, followed along, and paid attention the entire time. No smartphones to check, no swiping. Fast forward to 1997, and early internet studies start showing this blunt reality. Users don't read, they scan. And then by 2008, major publications like the New York Times were dedicating entire sections to just condensing complex articles down to a single, easily digestible paragraph. It's a massive, tragic shift, going from deep, sequential thinking to this modern era of just skimming the surface. Now, I want to be super clear about something. Our ancestors back in 1858, they weren't inherently smarter than us. They didn't have magical, superior brains. It's just that their minds were accustomed to the heavy lifting, the cognitive workout of reading and following long, sequential trains of thought. Today, though, we've conditioned ourselves for, 15-second segments? Quick sound bites? Endless scrolling? Our brains are scientifically exactly as capable as theirs were, but our modern minds have just severely atrophied, simply from a lack of use. It's like a muscle we just stopped flexing. Moving on to Section 2, let's talk about the rise of the new illiterates and how we're redefining success in a totally superficial world. Because this total lack of focus, it's birthed an entirely new class of people, and it's completely warped our definition of success. Historically, success was always tied to things like hard work, solid ethics, good character, and, actually contributing real value to society. But today, that metric has shifted almost entirely to just wealth and fame. Society will happily label someone a success, even if they bring absolutely zero real value to the table. And this is exactly why you see so many people actively throwing their morals out the window just to create the most provocative, highly controversial content possible. They will gladly trade their principles for a quick buck if it just means capturing a few seconds of fleeting attention. There's this brilliant observation by the Spanish poet Pedro Salinas that honestly hits the nail on the head here. He calls this group the new illiterates. And the really dangerous part, they're technically literate. They know how to read. They just actively choose not to. They're totally content living in this state of suspended awareness, just fully absorbed in endless, trivial consumerism. It's really sad when you think about it. A self-imposed life sentenced to a completely different and arguably much worse form of ignorance. That takes us into Section 3, the shallow mind, and how we are actively training our brains for triviality. So in his amazing book, The Shallows, Nicholas Carr completely shatters this modern illusion that reading quick little summaries is somehow just as good as deep reading. He has this one quote that hits like an absolute ton of bricks. He says, "We are training our brains to pay attention to the trivial." And I really want you to focus on that word, training. Every single time we sit on the couch and doom scroll, we are actively putting our brains through a rigorous training camp that teaches us to only care about superficial nonsense. We are literally rewiring our own hardware to reject anything that requires depth. Let's look at how this mechanism actually evolved, right? Tabloid journalism used to just be those cheap printed newspapers at the grocery checkout focused on celebrity gossip. You could easily ignore them. But today, that tabloid culture has completely morphed into these incredibly invasive algorithmic social media apps. And here's the truly scary part. Unlike walking into a library to pick out a book or, choosing to click play on this very explainer, these new apps strip away your freedom of choice completely. You open the app, and it just violently hijacks your attention by auto-feeding you a relentless stream of absolute triviality. You don't even get to choose what you consume anymore. And this triviality isn't just limited to pop culture or gossip anymore either. It has fundamentally infected how we consume real knowledge. We're seeing the extreme dangers of simplified science. Deep, nuanced fields, like psychology, for example, are being flattened out into meaningless little sound bites. You'll scroll past a single 10-second post that claims to perfectly define a highly complex trait like narcissism, right? But it completely fails to provide any actual foundational understanding. When our inputs become this shallow, our thinking inevitably becomes shallow. And shallow thinking, well, that leads directly to incredibly poor decision-making.
So I want you to pause for a second and just answer this honestly for yourself. When was the last time you paused a video just to think? And I don't mean pausing to scroll down and read the comments or looking for a quick joke. I mean actually stopping the media, sitting in complete silence and processing a complex thought. It's tough, right? Our focus has been masterfully stolen from us, and it's turned us into entirely passive consumers. All right, let's get into section 4. This is the fun part, retraining your brain. This is our cognitive rescue mission. Because here is the genuinely good news. If our brains can be trained to crave triviality, they can absolutely be retrained for depth. Human brains are wonderfully, incredibly adaptable. But the absolutely crucial first step is that you have to stop treating your brain like a memory card. If you treat it like this static hard drive that's just meant to hoard every chaotic thought and random piece of trivia you scroll past, it's just going to turn into an overwhelmed, foggy mess. Your brain isn't a storage drive, it's a processor. Its primary job is totally dynamic. It's meant to analyze, clarify, and sequence complex ideas. You literally have to get the raw, noisy data out of it so it actually has the room to work. So here is exactly how we get that mental processor running at maximum efficiency again. Step 1, you have to read deeply. And I do not mean reading bullet point summaries. I mean sitting down with traditional, long-form text to force your brain to follow a sequential train of thought. Step 2, externalize. Do you have a massive traffic jam of thoughts rattling around in your head? Speak them out loud, or even better, write them down. Writing is literally the ultimate tool for organizing mental chaos. And step 3, rewire your neural pathways through sheer consistency. Look, if you stop lifting weights, your muscles atrophy. If you stop reading and writing, your cognitive focus atrophies. Treating deep work as a mandatory workout is the only real cure for cognitive decline. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to share this incredibly beautiful historical perspective from Omar bin Abdulaziz. He once said, "I have an aspiring soul. Whenever it is given something, it yearns for what is higher." I mean, what a stunning concept, right? An aspiring soul, a mind that simply refuses to be stagnant. It absolutely refuses to settle for the trivial or the easy or the superficial. Instead, it constantly seeks out meaningful improvement and a much deeper understanding of the world. Which leaves us with one final, deeply personal question for you today. Will you settle for triviality, or will you awaken your aspiring soul? You have an absolute powerhouse of machine sitting inside your head. Please do not sell it short for cheap algorithms and endless scrolling. Choose to read deeply, choose to think sequentially, and actively choose to reclaim your focus. Thank you so much for investing your time and attention in this explainer today. Start your cognitive recovery right now, and we'll see you next time.